live?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We'll just press the button.
Right. Councillor Abraham, if you could turn your camera off, please.
We're now live.
We are live now, shall we?
We're live now, right? Okay. Welcome to this meeting. I'm Councillor Richard Hollis. I'm chairman of this Corporate Scrutiny Committee. We have in the virtual meeting Councillors Andre, Councillor Churchman, Councillor Hendry, Councillor Hobart, I think Councillor Hobart, Councillor Whittle, can you come out? There we are, Councillor Jones-Evans, Councillor Lilly and Councillor Quirk, and we're joined by Councillor Jill Kennett, who represents the Isle of Wight Association of Local Councils. I don't think I've missed anyone. Is Councillor Hobart in? Yes, he is, right. So everyone is there. Fine.
I'm here, Richard, yeah.
We also have a number of cabinet members, officers and external representatives in attendance. I can't see them, but I have various initials. And we also have the monitoring officer as well, Mr. Wild. Can you please be reminded to switch your mobile phones on after the meeting? And that includes me. And can you allow a slight pause before speaking to make sure that the technology catches up? Right. And also only speak when I ask you to do so, if I may, otherwise it gets a little bit chaotic. Voting will be taken by a roll call. The clerk will call your name and you either say for, against or abstain. Thank you very much. Now we'll move to the agenda. Minutes of the last meeting. To confirm as a true record, the minutes of the last meeting held on the 8th of September. I was not in attendance because I was on holiday, but can I take these as a true record and sign them? Just raise your hands, please.
Councillor Quirk and Councillor Lilly,
yes, Councillor Lilly, Quirk. Right, okay. Is that everyone? Yeah. Fine, I will sign those minutes. Right. And the date, 6, 10. Right, thank you very much. Any matters arising from those minutes? We don't normally have matters, right? Okay, fine. We then move to declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No, no declarations of interest. Fine. Public questions. I have received, or we have received, sorry, we have received one question, and this is from Michael Dowes, a written question from Michael Dowes of East Cowes. And the question is, has the Cowes Floating Bridge 6 been contractually taken over by the Isle of Wight Council from the shipbuilders? And if so, how much longer does the warranty and extended warranty have to run? And the answer to that is, Floating Bridge number 6 has not been formally accepted by the council under the build contract, pending resolution of the issues experienced with the floating bridge. So that it deals with that. Now the next item is the election of a vice chairman for this ensuing year. Well, in fact, it'll be till May. Right. Do I have any nominations, please? Right. I can't see Councillor Debbie Andre.
Yeah, she's there. Councillor Lilly wants to.
Councillor Lilly. Yes. Okay. Will you unmute, please, Councillor Lilly? And then I'll take Councillor Jones-Evans as well. Councillor Lilly?
I wish to put myself forward as the current vice chair to stand for vice chair again.
Okay, fine. Is there a seconder to that?
Yes, I'll second Councillor Lilly. Thank you.
That's Councillor Andre, and I saw Councillor Jones Evans raise her hand as well. So
I was just going to nominate Councillor Lilly. That was why I.
Oh, you're going to nominate Councillor Lilly. Do I ask if there are any other nominations for Vice Chairman? Councillor Quirk, can you unmute, please?
Hopefully I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she will be willing to accept the nomination, but I would like to nominate Councillor Debbie Andre.
Right. Is there a seconder to that? Seconder to Debbie Andre?
Councillor Churchman, if she wants to.
Councillor Churchman. Actually, I think we have to ask Councillor Andre whether she wants to do it. Do you wish to be do you wish to do take that position, Councillor Andre, if you were elected?
Thank you, Chairman. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, it does put me in an interesting position because I would be standing against a member of my own group. And it's also something that I really don't feel that I should decide solely without being able to go to the rest of my group. So I am going to thank you very much for the nomination and the second, but I am going to decline.
Right. Okay.
With regret, I must decline.
Right. Other do we move to the vote? I think we'll move. Right. We have a nomination for Councillor Lilly. Those people in favour of electing sorry?
I think we'll have to go through.
Oh yes. Right. Can you indicate if you're in favour of that Councillor Lilly takes that position?
Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Churchman. Councillor Churchman. You need to unmute.
For.
Right.
For.
For.
Councillor Jones Evans.
For.
Councillor Quirk.
For.
Councillor Kennett.
For.
And Councillor Hollis.
For. Right. Okay. So that is agreed. Okay. So Councillor Lilly, you are now elected as the Vice Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We now move on to the next item, which is the COVID-19 Response and Recovery. This is here. I mean, it's covered by all three scrutiny committees, I think, but there obviously is a huge cost to the COVID-19 situation. So that is why this is on this particular agenda. So who is that? Councillor Stewart, do you wish to?
Yes, but I will I'm going to do two things actually. First of all, Councillor Hutchinson will talk to this item. He is the deputy, but he is leading on the COVID-19 response and recovery. And while I've got some airtime, Chair, I was just going to ask whether in due course you would consider swapping items A and B around of item 6, only so far as we've got officers from the PFI contract here, and I think they would prefer being able to break away as soon as they've done their part.
I think that, yes, I'm quite happy to do that. I'm sure the committee will appreciate that, fitting in with officers' time.
Thank you. So I default to Councillor Hutchinson now.
Right, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure whether you can hear me yet.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you can. Okay, thank you. Committee will recall that a detailed report went to Cabinet last month, setting out the strategy of ourselves and our partners in dealing with the COVID emergency. That plan was approved by Cabinet, and we're now following the key elements in it. There are three pillars of recovery: community recovery, economic recovery, and place recovery. And I'll touch briefly on each. I believe that there are sort of four phases, and we all appreciate that this is very much a moving feast, because we know that elsewhere in the country there have been quite extensive lockdowns, and we are fortunate here on the island in still having a very low level of infection, and it's our full intent to try and keep it that way. So the elements of the COVID recovery will be firstly response, and I think we've done quite well in putting in place an awful lot of mechanisms to ensure that as money comes from government, it's paid out. As people ask for help, it's paid out. And we are expecting, of course, a significant change in the sort of response management, because at the end of this month, furlough alters, and we can see already that there is likely to be a spike in unemployment. Much depends on whether we also get a second wave here. So we would then move from response to what I describe as containment, which is really keeping everyone safe and keeping things going, and then hopefully to emergence, and then finally to full recovery, which I think is likely to be many months away at the moment. There are some, I can probably call green shoots, which are helping already. In community recovery, we've had £500,000 Green Homes grant awarded for the households in need of energy saving measures, and that will create employment and save money. We've had a £500,000 sustainable homelessness support grant, so we will be able to continue with the work that we've done in helping to support the poorest homeless people in the community. Our schools have successfully returned with very good attendance levels, better than the majority of the country, and we are fighting hard to make sure that we have the right test and trace measures here. And you'll all be aware of the problems that we've seen with the app and people being asked to cross the Solent. And I know that our Director of Public Health is trying to deal with that. We've got some economic recovery moving forward. We've got a pop-up business school starting in about 10 days' time, co-financed with Southern Housing, and we've got 140 people already registered for that to provide new business start advice for anyone that's unemployed. We're moving forward with the Island gift card. We've got some Island business advisors working with the Chamber of Commerce. There are 2 new advisors starting this month to support businesses in recovering from COVID impacts. We are supporting the Let's Buy Local campaign, and we've got the National Youth Work Experience Kickstart scheme with the Chamber of Commerce acting as intermediary for the small island businesses. So there's a good start there. And then even in place recovery, we've got some good news in that the £10 million Ride Interchange investment has been approved. So there are a lot of things going on in the background that not everyone will be aware of. What we are doing is to try and make sure we follow that outline plan, and that plan will be updated as appropriate, probably every 6 weeks or so. It'll go to Cabinet, and therefore, of course, will automatically come before scrutiny. So that's all I have to say by way of update, Chairman. Thank you.
Right. Does the Chief Executive have anything to add at all there, or we open it to members?
Thank you, Chairman. There's nothing further to add on behalf of the Chief Executive at this stage.
Right. So members, Councillor James Evans and then Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hutchinson, for that update. I was just wondering whether we had any indication from the business community for which sectors might be most affected by the end of furlough at the end of this month. Have we had any approaches by any bigger companies, for instance, or any sort of sector-led information as where we can maybe focus some of our resources if we have any, obviously. Early, basically, I guess it's like an early warning shots of what's to come. I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Jones Evans. I wish I had that crystal ball. We do know that the effect of the furlough scheme finishing is likely to be quite widespread. We've already seen indications across the board that there is an increase in applications for council tax support and also for government support through the benefits system. What we don't know is how many people will be taking up the new government allowances for those people that lose their jobs. That's something that's being managed directly by government rather than by ourselves, but clearly our own revenues and benefits people are keeping as close an eye on that as they can, and they are in regular contact as things change.
Right. Councillor Churchman and then Councillor Lilly.
Evening, Chairman. I wanted to query, Mr. Metcalfe sent round a note saying that we've been put on medium alert and yet we have very few cases. I want to know if anything, I know he was going to complain about that, and I suspect it's all about postcodes, PO, for example, so we're lumped in with Portsmouth. There's a piece in the Times today talking about COVID, and the bottom end of the list featured Southern Councils. The Isle of Wight had only 4.2 cases per 100,000 people, which is good news. But is this being spread about, please, even amongst the business community? I appreciate not everybody reads the Times. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Who wishes to answer that? Councillor Hutchinson?
Well, I think it's more of a comment than a.
Yeah.
And certainly, one thing I can freely confess is I don't have all the answers to this sort of issue.
Yes. The thing that I can't quite get my head around is how you have 0.2 of a case. You either have someone has it or they don't. But there we are. Councillor Lilly.
Excuse me, Chair, would you like to answer as Director of Health?
Yes.
As Director of Health, would you help to answer those questions?
Yes, go on then.
So in terms of a rate, we do a rate per 100,000, which is why you can have 4.2 cases per 100,000, because that helps us to compare with the rest of the country rather than an actual number. You're right, we are doing very well on the Isle of Wight, have a very low rate of cases. And the reason that the app said that we were all at medium kind of alert level was because that's where the country is. So there's no one on the low alert level now because of the state of the virus across the whole country, which is where we are. And we are doing very well on the island, but we mustn't be complacent because we do see a rising number of cases.
Right. I see Wendy Pereira wishes to comment on the statistics.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just to confirm for Councillor Churchman and members of the committee that the Council publishes on a weekly basis on a Tuesday the current rate of cases per 100,000, the number of positive cases within the last 7 days, and the confirmed cases running total for the island. that's something that we've been doing for approximately 1 month now, and that's published widely and available to members of the public and the island as a whole.
Right. Thank you. My comment was not supposed to be criticising. It was it just seems odd every now and again. Right. And Mr. Ashman, Christopher Ashman. No, there's something in the chat line.
No, Chair, just adding a bit of information on the data that Councillor Evans referred to earlier. Thank you.
Okay, can people see that in the chat line? The public won't see that. So, can we keep the chat line just really for asking whether people can speak? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair. Want me to repeat what it says in the chat line for the public?
No, right. I will do that. Christopher Ashman said some regional data tells us that hospitality will be affected, some redundancy in other firms, but no pattern as yet. But I imagine that is fairly well understood, since we have a seasonal. A lot of our businesses or industries are seasonal in the hotel industry, etc., hospitality. Right, Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. Before I go on to my question, I do wish to congratulate the Isle of Wight Council and its team and Chris Ashman's team in securing the 10 million for RIDE for the pier. That is extremely important for our economy in RIDE and also to the Isle of Wight and the links to the Bay Area, etc. So I think that is good news that we should celebrate. My particular question is to do with the track and tracing and the testing. We've had quite a lot of information nationally. This has been a problem. I would like a report on it locally from the Director of Public Health about what is actually the time for someone that is then having symptoms for them having a test, because that is extremely important in actually, as soon as we got people actually isolating and getting in quarantine, the quicker of that. So I'd like to know the time levels of people that have been identified as needing tests. Thank you.
Right. I don't know whether that's whether it's possible to answer that, but would sorry. Mr. Brian, is it Mr. Brian?
Yeah,
Mr.
I can
Brian?
answer that question.
Yes.
So the issue with tests is a national issue, and it's all to do with the lab capacity. So the lab capacity is increasing, but not as fast as demand and need for tests. As we've seen schools and on the mainland, colleges and universities go back, we need to see increased tests. So there has been a delay in people getting testing. That is picking up, and that can some people can get tests straight away, and it's due to the availability of slots. Now, what we've seen is that capacity being capped. So we have seen a delay in people getting tests, and in some cases we've seen a delay in results coming back. It is all speeding up, but however, we are working with Department of Health and Social Care to really see how we can further work with them to increase that capacity. So it's not possible to give a kind of a timeline, because we don't know from the information we have whether someone books on they've got symptoms from this morning or from 2 days ago, but we just do know that we are increasing that capacity nationally, which will then increase our ability to test locally.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor James Evans wishes to have another question.
Just supplementary one, talking about the economic fight back. I know the government are putting millions and millions into the Kickstart programme, and we have the Chamber of Commerce and Ryde Town Council both putting forward schemes, I understand, so where smaller companies can go and and find a young person. But what I was wondering about is really about our capacity on the island. I can't find any figures readily about how many people or how many young people within the age of 18 to 24 who are NEETs would qualify for a position. So just really understanding, what capacity we need as an island, not sure about the council, as an island, we need to be looking at putting in.
So the question again was how many people between 18 and 24?
Basically, it's the NEETs. They're not in education, employment, or training, isn't it? I believe that's the cohorts that are eligible to go onto Kickstart programme.
Right. Who is going to answer that?
Who can?
Who can?
Councillor Brading might be able to assist, Chair. He can certainly take the question away if he can't.
Right. Councillor Brading. You need to unmute, Councillor Brading.
Beg your pardon. Good evening, Chairman. Thank you for that. I don't know the details of the number. All I know is that since the Kickstart programme was launched, the office has been working incredibly hard with the Chamber of Commerce and Federation of Small Businesses to set up the intermediaries that will take this proposition forward. We will maximise this on the island. 140 businesses already expressed an interest in being part of the scheme, council being one of them. But if there's a specific question that's been asked, I can take it away and answer it. It's been led through our recovery strategy by Chris Ashman and the Island Futures team, but it's taking shape and more details will follow. But I'll happily take an email and a question from whoever sent it in due course, and I'll answer it.
Okay, well, I think that's is that fair, Councillor Jones Evans? Sorry,
Right.
you need to unmute.
Can Councillor Bray not take this as a question from this committee now? That would be rather than me having to write it out again. Is that all right? So just my concern is because we've got a small time frame which to register. We need. I think we need to understand for myself as a business person, as a member of the local business association. Do we need to be getting more people to be making themselves available as potential employers for these young people? I have no idea what how many people we're looking at.
I think Councillor Jones Evans, if you could pop a question via Mr. Thistlewood, and then that will get to Councillor.
Well, I've just given the question via this committee, so I think that's sufficient. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Is there anything else to Councillor Lilly? Did you? Sorry. Oh yes, Councillor Lilly. Yes. Supplementary.
Sorry. Hold on. Sorry, I am unmuted. My question was to come back on the answer from Mr. Bryant, the Director of Public Health. I just wanted to clarify what is the preferred target time or achievable target time to get someone tested and get a result back for us on the island. We must know on the Isle of Wight how long it is actually taking.
So a number of things just to pick up there. So as I said, we don't know how long people are waiting for tests. We know that the capacity is stretched due to the national lab capacity. And we know the ideal is to get tests turned around in 24 hours, and that's happening in a number of cases. However, it is longer for some people. So I know some people wait for 48 hours, I think is what the website says, but the quicker it is, the better, because then we can really manage this disease in a really positive way. But we are restricted by the national processes rather than the local processes.
Thank you.
Right, and I have just a question. It's a joint to that. Is with the testing, the COVID testing situation at the cricket ground, I personally asked for a test, or as I was told by a doctor to go for a test. When I went online, I was told to go to Lewisham, which I did not do, but it wasn't very helpful. Are we getting any feedback now that that situation is starting to be sorted out? where people from the mainland are told to come here and people from here are told to go to the mainland.
Shall I pick this up, Councillor Stewart? Is that okay? There's a number of challenges you pick up there, and with the restricted capacity on labs, there was a cap put on different tests. So therefore, when people logged on, they were given their nearest available test, and you heard some of those stories in the news about people from Sussex being sent to Inverness and things like that. So with that in mind, they put a 75-mile cap on there, but the system isn't smart enough to be able to manage the system isn't smart enough to be able to manage a piece of water, because it doesn't see it as anything different. So we've done a lot of work with the ferries to really discourage travel both ways, because it's really not appropriate for someone to travel with symptoms. It's not the right thing to do, whether that's on the mainland, to the mainland, from the mainland, anywhere. So we need to really discourage that, and that's what we're doing. However, you're right, there is a challenge with test availability. So what we really need to make sure is that those with symptoms of the persistent cough, the high temperature, or the loss of smell or taste get tests, and other people don't get tests, because actually they don't need to be tested for COVID, that they may have something else. So we're really working hard on getting the message out about symptoms as well.
Right, okay. I think there are no more questions on about the COVID situation. We'll move on if we may. Right, we're now to item 6. Items agreed, and we want 6B, I think, first. We're taking 6B first. I think that is correct, isn't it? Yes, which is regarding the highways PFI. The committee agreed that a report be submitted to the next meeting to clarify the approach taken in assessing the average measures used within the performance report. And who is going to do that?
So, Councillor Ward. Yeah, Councillor Ward's going to lead.
Ward, right. Okay, Councillor Ward, nice to see you.
And you, Chairman, and you. At the last meeting, members will recall that a quarterly performance report was presented. Following that presentation, officers and the committee agreed the following. Firstly, that the latest annual programme of works would be circulated to members. The latest annual programme will be circulated to members of the committee over the next few days. That a report would be submitted at the next meeting to clarify the approach taken in assessing the average measures used within the performance report. There was some lack of clarity on how assessments were done. I'm very pleased to say that Mr. Rob Gillespie from Island Roads has come along tonight to do a presentation to explain exactly how that works. I mean, I'm sure members will appreciate the PFI is a hugely complex contract, you know, at different levels. So it is virtually impossible for everybody to know every aspect of it. So Mr. Phil Horton is also here from Island Roads, and some council officers as well, and they will take any questions you have from the presentation. Thank you, Chairman. Rob, could I ask you to come in?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ward. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to try and zoom us in a little bit. So I'm here with Phil Horton, as Councillor Ward said, and also Jane Dando, the Head of Highway Service for the Council. We are going to attempt to now share a presentation. If I just try it on my screen here, first of all, and see if that works. It does, so let me just get that to the end. Good. Could I just check that everybody can see that? A thumbs up from somebody at the other end?
Yes, that is working.
Okay, thank you. So yes, following the last meeting, we were asked if we could provide some further detail about how the road and footway condition measurement is carried out. And if I recall back to the meeting, there was particular discussion around the principle of averaging and how that works. So we've tried to keep this, I say we, if it goes badly, nobody else will claim part of the we. If it goes well, it was a collective effort. And we've tried to make this as short as possible, and then therefore have room for some questions. So if I run through this, and then please ask questions as you would like. So the condition of the roads and the footways on the Isle of Wight are measured at regular intervals, and for that, roads are done every year and footways are done every 2 years. On footways, a survey is carried out every year, but half of the island is done 1 year and the other half the next. The measurements that are taken from that come together in a calculation, which I'll touch on a little bit, but not go into detail on, to provide two main indexes, two measurements, the Wight Carriageway Condition Index and the Wight Footway Condition Index. There's also an index which is calculated and measured for car parks particularly as well. So first of all, what are the roads and footways, and how are they judged and set up on the Isle of Wight PFI contract? So streets and roads are assessed in monitoring length. So I've highlighted a few words on that first slide there, which is the currency really of the contract: monitoring lengths, hierarchies and districts. So monitoring lengths are the way the project condition is measured. Many streets will have a single monitoring length, but others will be split into parts if they're a long road, for instance, out in the rural areas or larger urban areas. In general, in the urban areas, monitoring lengths will be about 250 metres long, or up to that if they're a single monitoring length, and about half a kilometre in rural areas. The types of the roads are split generally in reflecting national road classifications into 4 hierarchies: hierarchies 1, 2, 3, 4, and generally hierarchy 1, A roads, then classified roads, other classifieds, and then lower use or residential roads. Very similar to the national road classification. They're actually built upon the annual average daily traffic flows for the different types of roads on the island. And then in turn, the island, for the purposes of the highway service, is split into 6 districts, which are a map of which you've seen in previous correspondence, and obviously at the beginning in the outset of the contract as well. So districts 1 to 6. The actual measurements on the roads and the footways are carried out at set intervals, and this is all in line with national specification and guidance. On roads it's every 10 metres, and on footways every 20 metres. And literally every time the surveys are run, there are millions of pieces of data recorded. There's over 3,000 monitoring lengths on the island, 800 kilometres of roads. So if you imagine data, tens and tens of pieces of data collected every 10 metres and every 20 metres over those lengths, it amalgamates up into a huge data set which covers every inch of the roads and the footways of the island. All of those scores are then aggregated and averaged for each of the hierarchies within each of the districts. So the monitoring length is assigned its average score from all of those calculations that are done from the millions of pieces of data that are collected. I'll go on to speak about what type of information is measured in a second. So if we just follow that last bullet point again, all of the scores from the individual monitoring lengths are then averaged across the hierarchies and the districts. So you end up with a table of 6 districts and 4 hierarchies with scores in each of those for your particular district. So what makes up a score for a road or a footway? So the scores for roads and footways are recorded either by machine surveys or visually, in some cases, by a highway surveyor. And these are carried out by independent companies or independent and accredited surveyors to do that on our behalf. And the machine that you see there on the left-hand side of the picture is a scanner, a machine which has got a lot of computer technology in it, lasers, profile meters, and a lot of technology that's been built up over many years of development for the national road surveys, which are then in turn accredited by the Road Research Laboratory. The accent of the measurements that are taken on the Isle of Wight contract are measurements which are there to indicate the structural long-term asset integrity of the network. So the structural condition is a large part of the survey, which is indicated through the measurements that are taken with the machines or by the eye, by the surveyor. And some of those main things which are recorded to indicate the integrity of the structure of the road are, for instance, the rutting that's on a road, so longitudinal ruts where the tyres of the traffic go, possibly extensive cracking, and through that it's the severity and the extent and the pattern of the cracking that the survey takes the indication of structure from. And the general undulations of the road, the ride profile, the ride quality, if you like, is also one of the main indicators of the structural condition of the road. That is also taken into account with the safety of the surface of the roads in the Isle of Wight. This is measured by another particular machine which simulates friction resistance, and that's a picture of it there. The safety of the surface is also measured and indicated through surface texture, which is carried out by the scanning machine, which you saw in the previous slide. So an interesting thing with surface texture in highways world, we are always trying to balance the skid resistance of a road with its ability to shed water in rain, for instance. So a very, very smooth road, for instance, in the rain will have a film of water on it with a predisposition to aquaplaning and spray. Therefore, the road has to have a certain amount of texture to make sure that it's safe as well as skid resistant. So the overall score for the monitoring length is calculated 80% from the structural indicators, which I've just mentioned, rutting and profile and cracking, and 20% of the safety indicators, which are the skid resistance and the texture. That comes together in a calculation which is specified in the contract, which gives a score out of 20. 20 would be an absolutely perfect, brand new, smooth, just constructed road. But in the case of all of these types of contracts, the specification and the requirement is not for perfect 20 out of 20 roads. I think, as we discussed at the last Scrutiny Committee meeting, the averages required by the hierarchy 1 roads are 15.5 out of 20. For the other hierarchies of roads, it's 15 out of 20. And for footways, it's an average of 12.5 out of 20. So again, the average is for all the monitoring length scores to come together for the hierarchies in the districts, and you end up with a table similar to this, which you saw in the report that you had at your last meeting, which gives you a 6x4 or 5 grid. Hierarchy 4 is split into 2 slightly different ones. But you get a grid like that, so you have a score for all the monitoring lengths in your district by road classification as well, and each of those have to be met for the measurement of the contract. All of those have to be over 15.5, over 15, or over 12.5. So in addition to the averages, there are also minimum scores, which we did speak about briefly at the last meeting. So this is, if you like, your confidence and your safety net in that the averages aren't everything. So we also have to meet requirements for minimum scores. So no full monitoring length can fall below a score of 6 for roads and below a score of 5 for footways. Another safety net for the averaging is also a measurement called spot defects. So the machines pick this up as they're surveying, and they will be recording other small areas of defect, other small areas of undulation and the like. And the contract sets out certain percentage limits of these different types of defects that can be tolerated within a monitoring length. And if you exceed that percentage, then they need to be treated as well. So I just made also a note at the bottom of that there, that every time some of the smaller defects are repaired, which you will see teams out doing small defect repair as well on the network, each of those will also provide an improvement in the score that monitoring length receives when it is surveyed next. So I said this was a quick canter through. So in summary, the contract specification asks for those average scores against monitoring lengths in each of the hierarchies within each of the districts. The scores that are required by the contract are generally classified as good rather than excellent. Averages means that some of those scores can be lower, as was raised at the last meeting, and some can be higher than the requirements of 15.5 out of 20, etc. But the contract also required that during the first 7 years of the improvement, that each of the districts and the hierarchies were brought up to speed, up to level, compliance level, at the same time through the course of that 7-year period, so that each of the districts were all receiving some attention all at the same time. And finally, the contract for the remaining 18 years of the PFI project is to maintain those scores above 15, 15.5, above 12.5, right through the rest of the contract. And that requires us to continue to survey, continue to measure, and also predict through the modelling that we do as to when some of those monitoring lengths may reduce below the average, or our overall district will reduce below the average, or when scores become critical, maybe for a harsh winter or for other reasons, when we start to reach some of the critical spot defect safety nets or the minimum score safety nets, and those are then put into the annual programme going forward every year. So that was, as I say, a quick canter through. I'm sure there will be questions.
Right, thank you very much. Can we remove the presentation from the screen, and then we can see the faces of the committee again? And yours, please. Right, there we are. Right, do you have any questions? Sorry? Councillor Andre. Councillor Andre, yes, Councillor Andre, and then Councillor Kennett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rob, for that very, even though it was a canter through, it was a very detailed presentation. I think it's very clear from a scrutiny perspective that what we are looking at here is performance. And in order that we are satisfied that the contract is that the performance is according to the contract specifications, we need the data and the monitoring. Now, you told us in the presentation that the data is collected independently, which I think is a crucial part of this monitoring. Can you tell us, is this data only shared with Island Roads, or is it publicly available? Right.
Okay. The data sits within the Island Roads, but is shared immediately, is received with the council officers as well. When we talk about data, we talk about the millions of pieces of data. That is not, but not deliberately withheld, but it's for the council to decide as to what level of detail you would like to receive from that. We are literally talking about spreadsheets full of millions of pieces of data, which, with respect, don't mean a great deal until you align them with the requirements of the contract through the process that I've just described. So the resultant scores are the scores that, for instance, that you received in the performance report at the last meeting, and that is a result of the calculation of the contract, which is shared with calculated in working with the council officers to report that, and it's then sent through our monthly reporting functions within the PFI project with officers, and as I say, was provided to you in the performance report for the last scrutiny committee meeting, and I'm sure that will continue.
Right.
That was a long answer to say that that it's not shared publicly.
Right. And Councillor Kennett, you need to unmute, please.
Just have. Thank you very much, Chairman. That was really interesting report. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask a question because of the perspective on safety there. If you have a long-standing issue which you consider to be quite dangerous, and you've already been through the district steward, how else would that be picked up? I'm referring to the Causeway Bridge in Freshwater, which is in a very bad state. How do we connect with you if we can't get any response from the first line that we should be approaching?
Perhaps if I pick that one up, but firstly to answer the first part of your question, the measurement of condition that we're talking about here in relation to average scores is one part of the process. In addition to that, there's a separate series of requirements which link into our network safety responsibilities. So each particular hierarchy and type of road is inspected on a prescribed interval for a safety inspection. So what that involves is that an officer, one of our officers, will go out on a prescribed basis and they will attend to the entire length of that piece of carriageway and footway, reviewing for any safety inspections, any safety related, safety critical issues. If there is a specific issue that is raised with us, we will send out an inspector who has been trained on the intervention levels, and there are prescribed intervention levels that denote a safety defect. They're not universally the same throughout the country, but there are distinct similarities. For example, a pothole of over a certain depth would automatically trigger an intervention on safety grounds, or a trip hazard of a certain height in a footway would also trigger an intervention. So the two answers to your question: there is a regular, a planned, and it's a statutory obligation that safety inspection takes place in addition to the surveys that are completed. So that looks out for safety defects. If something happens in the interim and it gets reported through to us, we will send out a safety inspector who is trained to the national standard to inspect that issue to determine whether or not an intervention is required.
If I could just add to that, Councillor Kennett, I would say that I hope that our officers would explain to you why it doesn't qualify, if you like, for rectification. I would be disappointed if a fuller explanation isn't given to you as to what the grounds are for not completing that. So I'll gladly take that one away and make sure that one of our senior stewards discusses that further with you. Could I just ask for the reference again, Councillor Kennett?
It was the Causeway Bridge in Freshwater. Okay. The railings have all broken down. It goes over a river, so it is quite important. But it's just helpful to know how, if we need to escalate, we can. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kennett. I've got Councillor Lilly, then Councillor Quirk, then Councillor Jones-Evans, and following that, Councillor Andre wants to have another question. But first timers first, please. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. My particular question is to do with how we communicate better to residents about the roads that actually are on the programme and need resurfacing. I think it's very important because they're the ones who, in a sense, we're serving. And as a local council, I'm sure other local councils, we regularly get from people when a particular road's going to be done, etc. And how do we improve that communication? I will give a local example, but I know there's a number of these across the island.
Councillor Lilly, can we just answer we'll have that as a question, if we may, because otherwise we're going to run out of time.
Well, I just want to, that is my question. I'm just I wanted to give an example to support it, which is you had a road in Ryde that was all marked up, letters were just about to go out, and then suddenly they're withdrawn because white fibre are going to put in. That wasn't communicated to me. It wasn't communicated to the residents of Ryde, and I know that that has happened across the island. How do we improve communication to our residents, because they get very angry about not getting information at the right time?
Right. Mr. Gillespie.
All I can do is totally agree with you, Councillor Lilly. I live somewhere too, and it does annoy me when things don't go quite according to plan. There are processes and rules in place of how the utilities work with the local highway authority as well, and the local service provision. And that doesn't work all the time, I've got to say. Often it does. We need to have as much visibility as possible of others that are occupying the network as well, and that is done through the Streetworks process. So there is communication happening. How readily and quickly it can be received, be sent out to residents, I think it's a fair point that you make. That can always be better. That must always be better, I believe, and I doubt we get that right nearly enough. So what I need to do is take that away back to the teams and ask them the question that you've just posed. How can that be better? Not tell them all the examples of where it's of what's gone wrong, but ask them to be imaginative and innovative in how that can be better and what media we use for it. Is it Twitter? Is it Fix My Street, the site that we have on our website? Are there other means of getting topical and up-to-date information out more efficiently to those that it affects? I don't have an immediate answer for you, Councillor Lee, but it's a fair point and it's a fair challenge, and we will take that away.
Can I just supplementary to that, Chair?
No,
can I have a supplementary within that? I would like to ask Island Rose to realise that many residents are not on the internet, and actually there does need to be creativity of getting to many of those residents that can't get things online. Thank you.
Well, there was a point made, but not a question. Right, Councillor Quirk.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask about roads that are persistently repaired that appear to be failing. An example would be Luckham Road in Shanklin. There's probably 1,000 filled in potholes, some of them longitudinal ones 6 foot long. I suspect that your machine will say that that's all right, but it looks like a road that is failing. How do we cope with that sort of situation?
I suppose that two parts to the answer to that question. The first one is that the visual appearance of a road is a relatively small factor. It's in reality, the surveys undertake measures based on the longitudinal profile, the surface texture, the cracking and so on. So it is a factor in the sense that if there are a number of repairs, the score will be potentially slightly lower. But it is also generally a point that you can have a road that's had a significant number of repairs that it might use the description looks more like a patchwork quilt, but it's a perfectly serviceable road. So on one hand of the question, the criteria we meet are purely based on the performance of that road, not that visual appearance. However, the second part to the question is it also depends on the nature of the repairs and the nature of the reason why that is taking place. So, for example, if a road has a utility trench that's subject to progressive failures, we also have some instances where we've put asphalt down. We've had some problems with the material or the works that we've done, and there will be an underlying reason that manifests itself as a structural issue, which would generate a further intervention. But in terms of visual amenity, because something doesn't look as nice as a brand new shiny road, that's not characteristic for immediate intervention, to answer your question directly.
Right. Thank you very much. After Councillor Quirk, Councillor James Evans. Councillor Ward, could you come off screen, please?
Thank you very much for the presentation. just a sort of clarification. With the independent surveyors doing their surveys of the lengths, you're saying about spot defects. So you're saying when they're doing their checks, they're doing their 20-metre checks on a footway. If there is a defect within that 20 metres, that is being recorded, so nothing's being lost.
The Councillor Jones-Evans, the spot defects requirement refers to the road, not the footway. I do apologise if I didn't make that clear. But the machines that run on the road will be recording defects. But as I say, all those defects come together in the score. But for certain types of defects, you can't have more than a certain percentage of the road area covered by defect. So that's one of the safety nets. But certainly the condition is being measured for various parameters, texture, rut depth. I think it's about 28 different measurements on footways, which are actually recorded by the surveyor. So there's every area of the footway and the carriageways having condition data recorded for it.
If I could perhaps link that into the earlier question that was asked, if something is a fundamental safety issue, it will involve an inspection against the intervention criteria for safety. So what we're not saying is that if there is a dangerous pothole, for example, that's clearly dangerous, far too deep and is a hazard to passing traffic, it gets ignored to the next survey. It will be subject to an inspection if it gets reported, or it will be subject to one of those periodic safety inspections to the defined category of road that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
You just encourage members and members of the public to report any defects they come across.
Right.
We would encourage people, if possible, to use the Fix My Street app, because it's very good. I have to say, it's a tool that works, and we touched on it briefly in our last discussion. But it's also a very effective way of identifying exactly the particular issue that's being talked about, as opposed to a section of road where it may not immediately be obvious. So it's a very useful tool that's available to members of the public and yourselves alike.
Right.
Sorry. On the figures of our next update, we're going to give us the user figures on that, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Oh, yeah, apologies. Yeah, for your next report, perhaps we could see the user figures for that app.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillors. Councillor Andre has said that she's withdrawing a request for answer another question, but has quite rightly said, can the slides be sent to the members, please?
Yes, very happy to.
Of course.
Right. I have one very small question on the presentation. Unless I've got it wrong, the roads are measured annually. I think you say the roads are measured annually, half the road 1 year and half the road next year, the following year. Is that correct?
No, I do beg your pardon. I'm sure I didn't make myself clear. The roads are measured annually, every year.
Yes.
The footways are simply done half 1 year and half the next year, and that's districts. That's not one side of the footpath and the other side the next year. It's 3 districts 1 year and 3 districts the next year for footways.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, because if it was the other way around, it'd be every 2 years. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you kindly for that presentation. I think we will then move on, if we may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The Highways Pier, with the Cowes Floating Bridge. The committee agreed that to receive a report at its next meeting detailing the actions being taken to ensure that the vessel is operational and to enable discussions to take place on future operation for the service, involving Councillors Love, PC Wilcox and Jones-Evans, the leader, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure and the Chief Executive. Right.
I'll lead on that, Chair, for you.
Right. Councillor Stewart.
So
yes.
discussions have taken place with committee members and ward councillors following the last meeting. A meeting has also been held with 2 described as experts nominated to discuss the floating bridge matters with myself and Councillor Ward, and there is an ongoing dialogue now taking place with those individuals. Legal proceedings in accordance with the contractual requirements continue, and actions continue to ensure the vessel is in operation and operational position. And I'm going to ask Alex Minns, who should be on this meeting this evening, to give Scrutiny Committee a brief presentation, after which I will put a suggestion that to all scrutiny members may wish a members briefing in due course and be kept fully informed. But I'll just call on Officer Alex Minns if he's there, please.
Yes, there
Yes,
is.
Good evening. Good evening, councillors. If I've got a presentation to make to you, which I think committee admin were going to share on the screen, if we could ask them to do that. There we go. If we can move past the first slide. The second slide, I think, has been very well covered by the leader already. That's the request that you made in your September committee. So if we can move to the third slide. Right. Obviously, what I'm hoping to do in this it's a very brief presentation, and it is very brief. It's only a few slides. Is to talk you through the issues that we've currently got. The first is the issue around the hydraulic system, and that's why the boat has been out of action for a short period. And we discovered that problem in July when we were doing our routines inspections. The second is obviously just to point out that really that obviously that we've had problems, and I think we acknowledge the fact that we've had problems since May 2017, and in particular the main issue that we've got, and I'll reinforce this because most of the other issues now are in transit or have been sorted, but the main issue we've got is that there is insufficient clearance over the chains, and that's something we're looking to put right, and that's something we have a plan for, which I'll cover a little bit later in the presentation. We can go to the third slide, please. Right, the immediate issue that we've got, the current issue that we've got, and the reason that the boat is out of action was because we discovered in July that the boat had a problem with its hydraulic system. And the hydraulic system does an awful lot more on the boat than just runs the rams. It runs most of the boat, so it's quite a significant problem. So when we found out that problem was occurred, we've obviously worked with the shipbuilders, and they have removed all of the motors, the pumps and the valves, and taken all of that equipment off site and have stripped it down and inspected it, and they're repairing it currently. It is quite a major job. The rebuild has commenced and some of the refitting has started, and the original intention was that we would hope to have the boat back in service for testing on the 9th of July. There has been a delay, and you can see on that slide at the bottom, we're now expecting to return to service on the 17th of October. And the reason for that is when they actually started to strip down the main components, they actually found that there was a very significant problem with one of the main motors, and they've had to have that completely rebuilt. So it has delayed the original program. But the hope is that it will return back to action on the 17th of October, just in time for the half-term week. That covers the immediate problem. I think on the next slide, if we can go to the next one. Right, as I alluded to earlier, the major problem that we've still got and that we've been trying to deal with over a period of time now is the distance over the chains. We've looked at a number of different options, which we've been discussing with various different experts, some of which has involved things like the independent control of the two drive shafts. Also involved looking at increasing the number of piles in the river to hold the boat in place. We've even looked at systems where we would have a traffic light system for the boat to transit across the water. All of those, despite being very inventive, haven't been able to fulfill all of the requirements. And the most feasible option, which has been put forward to date, is to install side thrusters on the side of the boat. And what that would in effect do, because the problem that we've got, and the problem with the chain clearance occurs on very fast flowing spring tides, where the boat starts to move away from its prescribed crossing. Obviously, thrusters would help it to remain on course and go across the river in a straight fashion, and which would then allow the chains to be at the right level. So we're now looking at thrusters, and we have been for quite some time. If we were able to install the thrusters, able to fund those thrusters, that would then negate the need for having that push boat and would overcome the most significant problem that we've currently got with the floating bridge. So we're looking to work with a company called Longitude, who are looking at the various different options for thrusters that have been put forward. It's Longitude are a marine engineering expert. There's been 8 options suggested. If I could just ask you to move to the next slide. Yeah, as it says, there's 8 thruster options that are being evaluated, and these are being evaluated independently, so we can get some independent assurance that this actual proposal will work. And they are looking at those factors. So they are looking at, within those 8 options, obviously the cost and the design cost, the installation. So it is an important factor when we look at the different options. How long would it take these thrusters to be installed? So how long would the boat be out of action to allow that work to take place? Obviously, the ongoing running costs of those different options in terms of fuel consumption and maintenance. And another significant factor, we have overcome some of the noise problems that we had when we initially put the boat into service. Clearly, we don't want to then introduce further noise issues when the thrusters are installed. So noise is going to be an important factor as well. Okay, if I can ask you to move to just 2 more slides. Right, so in essence then, we are waiting for that report to come back. This is the report that we've been waiting for, which we hope will allow us to make a selection on one of those options from those 8 to allow us then to get on and try and solve the problems that we've got with the bridge. That report is due at the end of October, and that report and that information is the kind of information that we can share with interested parties, and that will hopefully tell us all of those things. It will talk about the design time, it will do the work in terms of liaison with the Marine and Coast Guard Agency, it will talk about lead times for ordering equipment, and in effect develop a timetable for that option and hopefully lead through to staff training and finally commissioning. Now we need to appraise those 8 options very well. We need to take expert advice from Longitude, and we need to select the best option that will work and hopefully solve these floating bridge problems once and for all. So that in terms of the kind of very brief presentation, hopefully that just gives you some insight without getting too technical. And clearly I'm not a technical person either, but in terms of the immediate problem and what we're doing to try and overcome the issues with the hydraulics, which we hope will be solved on the 17th, and the ongoing issue which we have about the chain depths and how we intend to resolve that. And then lastly, was just to really just give you a very quick update on where we are from a legal point of view. I think, I said at the beginning, the council has recognised that we've had issues with this bridge since it came into fruition in May 2017. And there are ongoing legal discussions with the company that designed and the company that built the boat. Both of those 2 companies are cooperating with us, and there is an active dialogue process going on with those companies in the hope that we might be able to recover some of our financial losses that we've sustained to date. So that is an ongoing piece of work which a number of officers are involved with, and we'll hopefully be able to give you updates to that as and when we can. At this particular moment in time, with where the negotiations are, I think it would be inappropriate to comment on the detail of that legal discussion, but I think it is important that we share those discussions with you as we move forward. So that's the brief presentation. I don't know if any of my colleagues have got anything to add or whether anybody would like to ask some questions.
Alex, I'll just come back in there just to follow up on your presentation, and thank you for taking the time to give the Scrutiny Committee a very clear, up-to-date picture. 2 key points I want to highlight. There will be a report coming through assessing the hydraulic situation, and that may be of interest to the Scrutiny Committee once we can release that. And Alex has mentioned about the side thrusters, and these actually would replace the need for the push boat, which is currently used at extreme tides. And I think it is a matter of public record that the cost at the moment out of our revenue budget for that boat is something in the region of £97,000 a year. So although there will be a significant capital investment in the side thrusters, the positive impact on our revenue budget would be significant. So I just wanted to make sure Scrutiny had the latest position on that, and I'm sure either Alex or myself will be happy to take questions if we haven't already answered them. And also I did mention that we would be happy in due course to provide a members briefing, that's a Scrutiny Committee members briefing, at the appropriate time if that were proposed.
Right. Thank you very much. I've got two questions. I want to ask a question as well. First person is Councillor James Evans.
Chair, and thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Minns, for the presentation. Just want to clarify something. Despite what it says, what the committee agreed to last month, I was not allowed to attend the meeting with the Leader and the Cabinet member, along with Councillor Love and Councillor P.C. Wilcox. The Leader of the Council would not meet with me being present, so I was not there. Just want to clarify that for you. Secondly, again, we're looking at another modification of this vessel. Firstly, we had to redesign the slipways, and then we've had to put dampeners on the hydraulics on the ramps. We've done all sorts of things over the years, and now we're looking at side thrusters. It just appears to me, and pretty much every man on the street that I talk to me about it, because everyone's very interested in the floating bridge. It just seems like it's fundamentally not designed for our river crossing. We keep having to modify it to fit it. It means it wasn't designed to fit the river in the first place. So, my question is, when are we going to finally realise that the design is just fundamentally flawed?
Well, thank you for your question, Councillor Jones Evans. I probably, and I'm not going to go too much, I think you'll find that is the subject of the legal discussions that are taking place. And obviously, if members want, we can go right back to the original contracting and signing of the vessel over and then take it right through the journey. But we are where we are now. As I've always made clear, my priority is to make sure that the community of East and West Cowes get that service, because I think it's really important to them. But it's a good and fair question, and I'm sure the legal discussions will look to ask that question on your and my behalf.
Right, thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Minns, for giving that kind of detail. Thank you. I think one of the particular points and then a question is when I saw the risk registers, or the risk register, there was only one in 2015. It clearly, the dated 2015, I saw it in 2017, clearly stated the problems with the chains. So there's been a flaw within the whole design. And I think that, the council really needs to tackle the designers of this, because they built in a flaw. And I totally support what actually Councillor Jones Evans says, whereas actually we're trying to redesign the boat, the ferry, where actually it was flawed right from the beginning. I do understand you are where you are, and you have to look at all the options of how to get this through. But do we have a time limit, a time scale which can be given to the public of at least a service, and then a timetable of having a long-term solution to that service? Because you talk about money coming back from the Isle of Wight Council, but actually the local economy and the local community and the families that have to get their children are suffering every day. And we do need to give an answer of a short-term solution which is deliverable, and a long-term solution which is sustainable and achievable.
Right.
So my question
I didn't hear
to
the
the
question.
leader
I didn't hear the question.
is very simply, what is the short-term date that we have a service, whether it's using a boat to push it up across, and a long-term solution? We need to give dates to the public.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Minns put his hand up to answer that. Sorry, Mr. Minns. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm terribly sorry to insult you and call you a councillor.
Thank you very much. In answer to Councillor Lilly's question, as I said in the presentation, the boat will return on the 17th after the initial issues, and we will have the push boat in operation. So the boat will be then available to the public for the foreseeable future, as it has been, in the past. The issue with the long-term issues that you refer to, we're due to get the report back from Longitude at the end of October. And as I said in the presentation, that will then allow us to look at, they are going to suggest a timetable and some costs that we'll be able to appraise and probably answer your question at the next scrutiny.
Okay.
Right. Did I? Councillor Quirk, and then Councillor Andre.
Thank you. I think that there's certainly something in what Councillor Lilly said about the issues of the past and things that maybe scrutiny should be looking at the whole case of what's happened with the floating bridge, and it would seem to me that once the legal situation has resolved itself, we as a scrutiny committee should actually have the leader come and present to us everything that's gone on right from the start to what's happened during the current work and what's projected for the future. But I think we have to wait until the legal situation is resolved before we can really do that. But if necessary, doing it in camera.
Right, yes. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, coming in last, I'm not going to repeat what colleagues have said, only to say that I'm very concerned that we do seem to be looking at this very much in the short term. Things go wrong, we fix that, then something else happens. One concern that doesn't seem to have been mentioned, and certainly not on the option evaluation, is about the environmental impacts of this. And if we bring thrusters in, is that going to actually affect the environmental status of the river? And do we have any evidence that we are monitoring how this is affecting the actual marine life?
Right. Well.
I think I was trying to listen very carefully to what Councillor Andre said, that she's concerned about the side thrusters, the impact. So when we consider the options, that's a right question that we can ask, and I think it's a fair question. Although I saw you nodding your head, Chairman, I know you've got some experience in the boating world and probably could answer that yourself, but I think we'll take that question away. That's a fair point. Consequence on the marine life? Well, there are a number of issues in that particular estuary which appear to have affected the environment, as you probably well know, ranging from breakwaters to all sorts of things. But we can only deal with that which we have, as opposed to that which we suspect. But again, I think it's a fair point, and I suspect that the Scrutiny Committee in due course may want to see the environmental study that was done by the designers, if indeed we have one.
Right. I'm going to ask just a question that you probably won't want to answer. We go back to the original situation that something is designed, so that is presumably a marine architect. Marine architect asked what the design should be, and presumably they then asked the other authorities what the physical situation of the Medina. And my question is, was the right question asked about the increase in tidal flow in the marina that has come consequently because of the breakwater? And the question is, were they given the right answer? Because I can't believe that a marine architect would design something with such a fundamental flaw with relation to the chains, and that I'll leave with the officers as I think is probably one of the major questions to be asked. I'm sure you'll be asking it anyway. But there we are. I don't think we've got any other. Oh, Councillor James Evans, I beg your pardon. Yes, you have. Go on, Councillor James Evans.
Just a quick one. I recall reading in the original business case for the floating bridge, and obviously we got the money from the LEP to do so. I seem to remember somewhere in the documentation it said that we should be saving yearly for the next floating bridge. I was wondering how much money have we saved for our next floating bridge?
Well, I haven't seen that entry in the paperwork. You've obviously had sight of something I haven't, but if that is in there, I will make inquiries and give you a response.
Right. Okay. I think we've now, unless there's anyone else has got, Councillor Lilly has a proposal. Hasn't? Yes, Councillor Lilly has proposed that the Corporate Scrutiny Committee has an updated report at the next meeting, and I can't read what the rest of it says because it's Seymour. Hold on. That confirms that the service is back in service in October, and a detail of short and long-term plans as stated by the officers. Well, I'm sure that will be forthcoming if we ask for it. All right. We do have, I think we need to move on now. I think we ought to just have a very short break, a 5-minute, 6-minute break, something like that. Is that agreed? Right. Thank you very much. Right. I'm just going to turn it off for a minute. Well, I'm going to move my camera. Apparently, they lock it at 6 o'clock, but I don't think put a sign outside there.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Okay, we're getting ready to start again. If we can remove the committee adjourn for a 10-minute break so I can see the faces again. Oh, hold on, I'm not on show console. Oh, there we are. Right, we'll go back live, yes. Right, we'll start off again. I've got a proposal from Councillor Lilly. Don't we need to vote on the situation with the floating bridge? Okay, but I mean it's all there. The questions have been asked. I don't think we necessarily need a vote on that. I would rather sort of press on if we can. Is that acceptable, Councillor Lilly, or are you insisting on a vote? In which Councillor and then Councillor Quirk.
No, I'm happy to move on as long as it's minuted that our views that we obviously want to keep a track on this and get some kind of report at the next meeting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Councillor Quirk.
I totally agree with Councillor Lilly's sentiments, but I suspect that at the next meeting we'll still be in a legal situation and certain of the information will not actually be forthcoming. So whilst I think we should have an update at the next meeting, I think that once the legal situation is completed, we should have a full presentation from the Leader of the Council on the whole of the the case for the floating bridge.
I agree.
I don't disagree with that, Councillor
Right.
Quirk. I think the key is we want to know that it is in operation and serving the community, even if it's being pushed.
Yeah, there's 2 stages.
Right. Right. If we may move on, please, to review items due to be considered by the Cabinet. I think, is it the first one, the approval of the Public Spaces Protection Order? Right. And there's quite a comprehensive report on the Cabinet papers about that. Cheers. Right. Does the leader want to make any? Do you want to make a presentation or comment on this?
Chair, just for the benefit of the. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, you can now.
Yes, as you will see, members, from the Cabinet papers, it's a very comprehensive document. And in essence, what this is doing is bringing together a number of previous pieces of kind of legislation and orders into one document. When you read through it, it brings together some of the things like when dogs can and can't go on beaches. Just want to clear up one myth that somebody's picked up on wrongly. It doesn't say that dogs can't go into cemeteries. What it does say is that dogs can't go into cemeteries when they're not on a lead, which I think is a very respectful thing for the people whose loved ones may be buried there. So there's things like that, but it will come before Cabinet. It's been a lot of work. It's a very big document. Councillor Gary Peace, whose area this comes under, will be talking to it at Cabinet on Thursday. So if there are questions or comments, all I would ask, I think the bottom line on it is that we just look for scrutiny's comments on the document, and it's always important for me that we take account of scrutiny recommendations.
Right, Mr. Minns just wants to say something.
Yeah, just very quickly, just for members' information, I did take a report on the PSPO to neighbourhood scrutiny this week, and it was a very satisfactory vote at the end, and everybody was in approval of moving it forward to Cabinet as quickly as possible. So, thank you.
Right. Does anyone have any particular pertinent questions with regards to this? The only thing the only thing I sort of picked up was that perhaps at some stage timing could be looked at various beaches. I think around some people suggested, why does it start in May? I'm sure there was probably a very good reason why it started in May originally, for example, at Ryde, and there are comments and counter comments. And Springvale Beach seems to be, people are questioning why that is comes under this. I should declare an interest that I own a dog, but anyway.
I probably should do the same, Chair.
Right, thank you. But if no one's got any, Councillor Quirk, on.
Just to say that we did discuss this at the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Regeneration, and it was it seemed a no-brainer to us that everything in there seems perfectly sensible, and it was a unanimous decision at that meeting. Right.
Okay. Do we? Councillor Liddy, I haven't got that. No, I think he raised his hand. Oh, Councillor Liddy. Yes, Councillor Liddy.
Thank you. I too view that it's comprehensive. So my only particular question and point is Hampshire have a very good dog-friendly strategy in place. It's been promoted by Birds Aware for some years that for the Isle of Wight to consider the Hampshire one, which actually balances the needs of all the public, the ones who have issues with dogs and the ones who don't, because we are also a very dog-friendly island for tourism. It's extremely, important part of our sort of clientele. So my question is why the Isle of Wight hasn't considered the Birds Aware sort of supported strategy that has been promoted for some years, to adopt the Hampshire model of dog-friendly policy.
Well, I don't know that it hasn't been considered, but what I would say to anybody who, and I get on very well with Hampshire in many ways, but I always think that the Isle of Wight has the right to consider the unique island experience of this. We've got a coastline, as you say, we've got tremendous tourism, and we always try and strike the balance to encourage visitors with dogs to come to the island, but also those that don't find dogs on the beach at certain times of the year very suitable. And I think we need to make sure that we've taken all the Isle of Wight's interest, which is why I think this is such a comprehensive document. But I note the point. That's a very fair point. Councillor Peace is on the meeting this evening. I'm sure he will note that. And thank you for that suggestion.
Right, Councillor Peace, I think, or Councillor Quirk. Did you want to say something?
Just that I was going to say more or less what Dave said, that Councillor Stewart said, most of the beaches on the island are actually dog friendly all year round, but dogs do carry serious diseases, and it's not just about birds, it's about the whole of our tourism delivery, and therefore I think it's totally appropriate that we actually have one that's designed for us, not designed for Hampshire.
Right, Councillor Peace.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Stewart has also said. The whole business around these public safety protection orders was to wrap up previous legislation because we had to, because the legislation was changing. And this piece of legislation and this paper brings all of the previous rules and regulations together in one place. That was the main point about this paper. It wasn't to expand the remit and all that kind of stuff. However, that said, the views that have just been expressed by yourselves around whether it's appropriate for our island and whether we can make it work for us individually has all been taken on board. It's also been expressed to me outside of this forum by other people such as Ventnor Town Council and so on and so forth, because they want to make sure that the paper takes into account everyone's views. I will be having further discussions with officers, and I will be making I'll be talking to this paper at the forthcoming meeting. So your views are taken on board. I'm a dog walker myself, so it's important to me. So please be assured that that nothing will go amiss.
Right, Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to pick up on something that Councillor Lilly raised earlier, and I must also declare that I am a dog owner. Yes, it's a very comprehensive document. I'm pleased to see the high level of public consultation that has gone into this document. But again, we do need, I feel, a bespoke plan for this island. And I think that to have a total ban on certain beaches during certain months, where there could be a possibility of having up to, say, 8 o'clock in the morning or in the evening when there's hardly anybody on the beach, then I also would like to make the point I am concerned about the fact that we are known as a very dog-friendly island, and we can't underestimate the tourism that actually does bring to this island. And I have to say, though, as a dog owner, I don't actually go on beaches when they're busy because it's too much hassle with my dog. So a lot of it is self-policing, but I do wonder, are we going too far because these orders are actually encompassing certain areas like the Dover, which previously were dog friendly, are no longer dog friendly. And I would have liked to have seen something that didn't go quite as far to banning dogs completely from certain beaches during the summer.
Comment. Right. Who's going to answer that? Councillor Peace.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As I will say, you know, the whole basis of this new paper and these new regulations was simply to wrap up what we've already previously had, without changing, you know, massively anything in any great detail. That said, I do understand the concerns. I echo those concerns. I do not want to clamp down any further than we already have. That opinion has been expressed throughout this entire process, and I will speak to this paper this coming Thursday and let you know what we can do. But it's not our intention to try and force extra controls onto anybody on this island. I fully appreciate that we are a dog-friendly island. That's where, you know, a lot of our tourism comes from, and I don't want to be restricting myself from walking the dog on the beach, let alone anybody else.
Thank you very much indeed. I have to say that I quite agree with Councillor Andre. And it's not only banning dogs per se, but dogs do need to be able to go off the lead to exercise. I just wish, as an observation, that more people, or people, did not pick up dogs, or do pick up a dog instrument and put it in a black bag, but don't then throw it into a bush or leave it for someone else to deal with. And if we could introduce something that answers that. I'm sure it's a littering problem anyway, but anyway, I just make the comment.
Absolutely, Chair. I think people are the problem, not the dogs.
Yes. Councillor, do you want to ask another question, Councillor Lilly? I'm not
yes, I would. I also declare I'm a dog owner, so with that. But my question is about enforcement. How's this going to be enforced? Because it's extremely difficult when you actually see people breaking things to actually approach them. Quite often, and I hope I'm a friendly dog owner, but some of the dog owners that do actually hinge some of the problems are not terribly approachable, especially from someone like myself. So you know, how are we going to police this and enforce it?
Councillor Peace.
Chair, well, quite simply, Councillor Lilly, nothing's changed. We already enforce these things. There is no change in the enforcement regime. We are doing exactly what we've done previously. That's not great. I know, you know, we don't have limitless supply of enforcement people walking around on the beaches. It is, unfortunately, it's down to people making reports, it's down to people, a bit of peer pressure, and it's down to education. But ostensibly, it's down to people behaving and doing what they should be doing and controlling their dogs. You know, I, for one, I don't necessarily, and this is my own personal view, I don't necessarily agree that all dogs need to be on leads. What I would insist on is that your dog is under control. You don't have to have a dog on a lead for it to be under control. We've all seen dogs that are, you know, barking and snarling and still biting other dogs, and they're already on a lead. So that doesn't necessarily make any difference. It's about having a dog under control. And that, again, comes down to people, and it comes down to training.
Right. Thank you for that. Councillor Hastings wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to say I will declare at this stage that I used to be a dog owner, and when I was a dog owner, I owned 4 dogs once upon a time, and they were on lead and off lead, fully under control at all times. But the reason for that is where I got my dogs from the breeder. She was also a dog trainer, and she trained the dogs, but she trained me as well. There is no such thing as a bad dog. There are just some bad dog owners. And that's all I want to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree.
Can all go home and see if we meet which category we fit into. Right, what do we want to do with this? Do we support this proposal? Do we take a vote on that, or can we just raise a hand? Right, we'll take a vote on it. Go on then. Councillor Andre?
Against.
Councillor Churchman?
For.
No. Can you hear that? Councillor Hendry? Are you muting? You're on mute, I think.
Four.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
There's Councillor Hobart.
For.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Abstention.
Right.
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor Lilly.
4.
Quirk.
4.
Jill Kennett.
Councillor Kennett.
4.
Councillor Hollis.
4. Right. Okay, that's agreed. Right. Okay, that is agreed. Then we move on to approval of the housing strategy. And on the housing strategy, we are also putting something, Mr. Bolter would like to, or one of his team will be making a comment after that with regards to housing numbers, I think, is that right?
Yeah, I think Councillor Abraham wants to speak.
And Councillor Abraham, right. So, housing strategy. Councillor Abraham.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the first time that the council has had put forward a housing strategy since 2012. Unfortunately, there was been a long delay because of the COVID. It was due to come into place in March. I think it is quite extensive and covers the whole remit of housing. But I would like to point out that there is or has been for some time, for over a year now, a strategy for homelessness and rough sleepers that came in 2019. I'd also just like to thank you for allowing the presentation of the government white paper, because they rather kindly decided that they were going to have another look at how planning is delivered across the country. Unfortunately, because of the way that it's come in, it means we haven't been able to get it to fall into the committee system. So you've kindly allowed it to go to the committee today, which I'm really pleased about. I hope members have had a chance just to look at the new planning white paper that's come out, and we will see the presentation from an officer now.
Right. Councillor Kennett has had to leave us. Thank you, Councillor Kennett, for joining us. And right, who's that? Is it Mr. Brewer is going to make a presentation now?
Yeah. Good evening, councillors. Hope you hear and see me okay. Just following up from what Councillor Abraham said about the planning consultations. So there are 2 parallel consultations which were launched by the government on the 6th of August. The content of which have quite considerable implications on the island planning strategy, the housing strategy, and just in general the delivery of housing on the island. Officers worked with the portfolio holder and cabinet members to inform and prepare a comprehensive draft response government's first consultation, which was the changes to the current planning system document, which closed on the 1st of October. As the Scrutiny Committee will be aware, the draft was shared by the portfolio holder with all members on the 28th of September, and member comments that were received where relevant were incorporated into the final response. The final response was submitted to MHCLG on the 1st of October, and just to cover very briefly, it put forward our case for a lower housing number on the island that considers the unique challenges we have in terms of housing market, affordability and delivery, and a copy of this response was circulated to all members on the 1st of October. Officers are now working on the draft response to the consultation on the government's planning white paper, and this closes on the 29th of October. The planning white paper proposes quite major reforms to the way that local plans are prepared. Includes a maximum 30-month timescale, allocating land to one of three funds, and a focus on digitising the process to make it more user-friendly and accessible. The white paper also proposes that housing numbers will become binding and mandatory. However, they will take account of local land constraints and affordability issues, albeit there's no detail in the white paper on quite how such number will be calculated. So we just wanted to kind of come in front of you tonight just to make sure that you're aware members will have the same opportunity to shape the response to the white paper, and the primary purpose of the update is to just set out the timescales now for your information, so you're aware of when pieces of information will be coming in front of you. So Thursday 8th of October, this Councillor Abraham will be giving a portfolio update to the Cabinet meeting. The following day there is an informal Cabinet briefing where officers will talk through the 4 headline areas within the planning white paper, and on the same day officers will also send out an invitation on Councillor Abraham's behalf to a team session for all members, and this will be regarding the planning white paper and the draft response. Tuesday the 13th of October, officers will circulate the council's draft response to all members, and then the following Tuesday, with the date and time to be confirmed, it will be the planning white paper teams discussion again for all members. That discussion will be to help engage members, answer any questions they may have, having looked at the planning white paper and the content of it, and any ideas and comments they may wish us to incorporate in the final response to government. The 27th of October, Tuesday the 27th, will be the deadline for members to send the comments back to officers. A 2-week period for members from when they receive sight of the draft response to when they need to get comments back to officers, and then officers in consultation portfolio holder will spend the next couple of days before the 29th reviewing the comments and finalising the response before submitting to MHCLG. Very, very quick run through of some of the key dates, and just to make sure that you're all aware that members will be engaged in this process and will have the ability to make comments. And obviously, just to point out, members can of course provide their own responses to the government consultation should they wish as well. Happy to take any questions now. Barry, thank you very much.
Right. Any questions? Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Brewer and Mr. Abraham for the presentation. Yeah, as you say, you know, on the the last page of the report, the written part of the report, you know, it says about the survey, of course, was taken before the planning white paper was announced in August. So, you know, there's a lot to consider. Fantastic, we've got a planning strategy. I mean, that's just great. And looking at the when you look at the action plan, obviously it seems very, very comprehensive and very ambitious, and exactly what we should be doing. So the biggest danger, I guess, is this white paper, what's contained in there. And what I find confusing is it, you know, it's giving sort of a thrust to where it wants to go with these 3 areas: development areas, protected areas, and so on. But we don't really know what construes a protected area, do we, just yet? Is it going to be conservation area? Is it AONB? Is it going to be triple SSI? Is it, you know, does the biosphere, you know, come into it at all? We've got all these protection areas on the island. Is there actually going to be any room for any development areas at all? And what we look, and how much control we have over it? I mean, if there's a development area basically being designated, then that the
localism just goes out the window of that. We won't have a say in that. And also worries about democracy. You know, they're going to be no longer, are there going to be notices on lampposts or trees? People won't know what's going on unless they've got a smartphone. It seems to me great that become digitalised. This could be accessing papers and be able to comment and so on, but to remove a big section of democracy, I think is very, very worrying and very dangerous, and not where we want to go. So they're sort of talking about a localism on one part, and then they're sort of talking about, you know, on the other hand, they're taking it away, and I'm just a bit worried that I just don't get a sense that the white paper really knows what it is trying to be. It's a bit confusing.
Would you like to comment on that at all?
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into too much of what's in there, because obviously that's the purpose of the session that we'll have in a couple of weeks for all members, but there is quite radical changes in there to how we prepare local plans, and just both the length of time and how that process occurs. So certainly some of the comments that Councillor Jones-Evans made are things that the officers have also picked up on. And when we do the presentation, we'll be able to run through some of those issues which are likely to be foremost in members' minds.
All right. Go on. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting. Okay. Thank you. Following up on what my colleague Councillor Jones-Evans was saying, members may remember in November 18, I put in a motion highlighting the need for us to push for a new designation of an island park in respect of the Glover report. Now we now have the final recommendations from that Glover report, which I think in terms of planning does actually benefit us very much as an island, and I know that that's something that our MP is currently pushing on. My question is with the revelations from the Glover report, the fact that we are now biosphere status, I would like to think that within this white paper and the planning strategy that we now have, we can actually forge a designation, something that is actually relevant to the island. Is there any way that that can feed in, that the whole thing can be brought together? Because I think this could be a really good opportunity for us to actually push for these designations that have been outlined in the Glover report.
Right. Do does someone want to answer that? Councillor Abrahams?
Yes, Chairman, it does mean that we can actually go ahead and do that and comment on that. And as James has said, I think when we have the presentations, hopefully we'll have more time to be able to sort of speak about the issues, and those are the sorts of issues that we can talk about. Also, we are still looking at our local plan. Officers are coming up with a very comprehensive approach for us on what the numbers that we can actually do or likely to be able to deliver on the island. They're significantly lower than what we would have gone with or talked at in the first consultation period. And also we are in conversation with the MP, and I do agree with a lot what he actually says, what he says on it. But when we link it back into the housing strategy, I think we need to make sure that that it aligns with that, and that we can actually deliver the houses that we need for the 2,000 odd people that are sat on housing lists and will never ever get there if we don't actually get this right for the island. I just done one omission. I never thanked Paul Thomas for all his hard work put in the housing strategy together, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Lilly, you have a question.
Thank you. I think it is important that we do support the MP's Bob Seeley's thing for an exemption. You cannot have the island linked to the same kind of criteria as the mainland. We have to. We are a much smaller place, and we do have this problem with green belt. I am very concerned, taking on what Councillor Julie Evans has said, about the real difficulty that some areas of the island are protected and other islands end up having a lot of housing with it. And my question is how can we make sure that we can lobby to get an exception within any kind of legislation that fits our particular need as an island, and also looks at the issue of greenfield sites, and actually put much more emphasis on brownfield sites, empty properties, and also properties that actually above shops or shops, etc., that could be developed, because we have got in some of our towns, and I take this in Ryde, we do not have the infrastructure to actually cope with the kind of numbers that end up being put onto towns like Ryde. We just cannot afford that, and so we do need to really come together unitedly under our MP to not go on. We should only go on to greenfield sites at any kind of last resort until we've actually finished getting sites. So my question is, how are we going to really strengthen this?
Right, Councillor Abraham, and then Wendy Pereira would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you. I think I do agree with a lot what Michael said. One thing that
Councillor Lilly.
Councillor
Lilly
said. One thing that that I am keen that we actually do look at through the local plan is the policy that we have in the core strategy, which is building outside of the development envelope. I think that has been an absolute disaster, the way that it's been interpreted on the island. I know some of the officers might not agree with me for saying that. I would like to see it stopped completely, but there might need to be some sort of leeway given on that. But that is my personal view on that.
Right. We'll now move to Wendy Pereira, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank members of the Scrutiny Committee for the input and the discussion that they've been having on the development of a new planning strategy and informing the white paper. But I wonder if we might bring the discussion back to the report which is before you, which is the housing strategy, which will be put before Cabinet this week, please, because there is a huge amount of work that has gone into this by a number of officers across the council, and I would like that paper to be recognised and your input for Cabinet, please, if possible.
Right,
thank you.
I have a note of that. Very quickly, Councillor Jones Evans.
Yes, I had a question on the report before us. It's page 66 of the report, page 8 of our papers, and it's the creation of a council-owned subsidiary housing company. That's down for year 21-22. I'm just mindful that given the past and we've left it to market forces, we haven't managed to develop anywhere near enough affordable housing, and I just feel this is an urgent need. So I would like to see that company creation brought forward a year, because we are in desperate need. and to keep it till you know, a year and a half time, I think is something we need to review. That's my question. Can we bring that forward?
Can we bring that forward? Who's going to answer that? Councillor Abraham.
That is something that we can actually look at, but I will remind Councillor Jones Evans that next year we have a council election that is going to put a lot of things on hold until May, and then the new administration, whoever it might be, will have to look at that. So it's probably not going to be much quicker than it is actually timetabled.
Right,
Councillor Abraham, but I think the people that are living in bed and breakfast don't really care about council elections. They care about getting decent housing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
We understand that. We understand that. Councillor Quirk. No, you're still muted, Councillor Quirk. No, you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It seems to me that whoever's in power, we should be looking at increasing the number of affordable homes available, and that's the idea behind the company. You can set up a company. It might be until after the election that it actually starts to get used, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be set up and be planning things. And I would have, if Julie Jones Evans, Councillor Jones Evans was a proposal, I would second it.
Right. Who does anyone? Would you like to propose that, Councillor Jones Evans?
I would like to propose that. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Quirk, for seconding it. So I propose that that's that particular item on the action plan, page 66 of the report, that we create a council-owned subsidiary housing company to increase the number of houses built on the island, both invest in local communities, assist others on low or average household income to access housing. It's brought forward to year 2021.
Well, we asked the cabinet to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's right. Okay, we'll move to a vote on that.
Yep. Councillor Andre.
Councillor Andre, can you hear, Councillor? Everyone here? Let's just. Oh, right. Next.
Councillor Andre.
4. Again.
Sorry?
Councillor Churchman.
4.
Councillor Hendry.
4.
Councillor Hobart.
Councillor Hobart.
4.
James Evans.
4.
Councillor Lilly.
4.
Councillor Quirk.
That was 4.
And Councillor Hollis.
4. Agreed. Right, that's all agreed. Right. Have we got any more questions about the adoption of the housing strategy? Oh, yeah. Quirk said 4. Oh, they want to say something. Beg your pardon. Right. Councillor Lilly, a question for the chairman of the housing strategy.
The scrutiny committee, I believe it was the neighbourhood scrutiny committee, about 2 or 3 years ago, did a very good, had a task and finish group and did a very good report, and particularly highlighted some very creative housing schemes that had been adopted, particularly in rural areas around the country. I was on that. Councillor Quirk was on that, Councillor Andre, and also Councillor Tig Outlaw, who was actually the chair at the time. Has that strategy been linked to this current strategy in front of us? Because it was meant to be a guidance of that. I'm sure Ms. Pereira knows that.
Right, do we want to ask Wendy Pereira that? Or Councillor Abraham? Councillor Abraham?
Yeah, it did help form the strategy. Indeed, one of the outcomes of it is being our planning application that we've made at Branston Farm, which we've gone into partnership with Vectors Housing. So I think, you know, it's innovative what we're doing there. It's encouraging local enterprise, and I think if it does go get the benefit of planning permission, I think it will be an excellent scheme that the council will be able to be really proud of.
Okay, right. Did you want to ask a question, Councillor Andre? I saw you wave at me.
No, Chairman, I was just indicating that I was indeed a member of the Task and Finish group that produced that report on affordable housing.
Councillor Quirk?
I too was on that group, and I can confirm that. It seems to me that what we've got here is a housing strategy that is fit for purpose, and I would suggest that we actually give our support to it.
Yes, right. So would you like to move that we need to, that we agree to the housing strategy?
So move.
The adoption of the housing strategy.
So move.
Yes, and Councillor Lilly was seconding that. Right, we move to a vote.
Councillor Andre.
Councillor Andre?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my microphone. 4.
Councillor Churchman?
4.
Hendry?
4.
Councillor Hobart.
4.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
4.
Councillor Lilly.
4.
Councillor Quirk.
4.
4. Right, so that's agreed. Right. Right. Constitution is next. Is it Mr. Wilde that's going to, or Councillor Stewart? Who's going to?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just
Councillor
pause.
Stewart.
Yes, hope you can hear me. Yeah, so this is a report coming through which the monitoring officer was tasked with. It will be going before Cabinet for consideration on Thursday. It's a comprehensive piece of work. There's a particularly good summary, which members may find interesting to read. And it very much tries to make sure our constitution is in good and proper order for us as councillors. And that's what it will be about. Obviously, Mr. Wilde is here to take any questions or note any comments.
Right. I think. Have we got any comments on the Constitution? Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the organisation of our committees, one of the things that I asked about was reducing the numbers of members on committees. And I sent a fairly detailed email to Mr. Wilde suggesting that committees were reduced to either 5 or 6 people. At the moment, most of them consist of 7, because I felt that with 40 councillors, and next year it will only be 39, we are putting far too much weight on councillors to be on these committees. At the moment, I sit on 4. Out of 40 councillors, you are obviously going to have some people who are working and are committed to other things. So you're never going to get all 40 councillors opting to sit on a committee. It's something one has to accept in life. And if we want to attract a slightly younger set of councillors to join us, and hopefully working councillors, then we must not make it so burdensome that after 4 years, I won't use a nasty word, they just say, no, I've had enough. So my suggestion was we went to 6 per committee, because as the ruling group, as the chairman has the casting vote, it wouldn't matter if you had a split vote, because the chairman then gets the final say. If you take it down to 5, then the possibility is you rule out proportionality. It might get very, very difficult. It was turned down, but I still don't know why. And I just want to bring it forward again, because I'll bring it up again at Cabinet, because I really think we are pushing our councillors. In this day and age, there is so much going on that we really need to think about not so much the mental health, but the sheer pressures of being a councillor. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Well, who's going to answer that?
Well, I can answer, I think, to note Councillor Churchman's point of view, but the thoughts in my mind as she spoke were, one, we have about 6 months left now to the end of this administration period. That's quite a fundamental change. Those members that have been with the council for some time will know that we've had various combinations of scrutiny committees, for example, and others where we seek to get policy as well as scrutiny and so on and so forth. And I think whoever the new administration are come the date in May, I think that's a valid point that Councillor Churchman makes for consideration, but I would suggest that is left until that time. This constitutional amendment is addressing various things that have been circulated to all members, as I recall. I don't know if Mr. Wilde wishes to add to what I've said, but I think that would be appropriate.
Right. Anyone else? I haven't got any others. Other people there. I have something that have members any comments on the proposed recommendation of Cabinet for Corporate Scrutiny Committee to make comments by the end of October? Do we do that by an informal meeting? Do we need to have an informal meeting for that? That's the. Are you happy with that approach? And then
I'm very happy. I think this actually comes. Sorry, you almost have to make a decision, but it comes before the for consideration in November, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. And we might at that informal meeting also have the chairman of Health, John Nicholson, and also Michael Beeston, who looks after the other committee. Would you think that's acceptable? Can we just have a nod or show of hands? We don't have to vote on that, do we? No. Right. Right. Okay, that's fine. We will do that then. Is there anything else, or do we accept the this? We're going to go for an informal meeting, so that deals with that. Councillor Churchman. Councillor Churchman.
Yes, I think we ought to give a vote of thanks to Mr. Wilde. This has been a tremendous undertaking, and I suspect that because of his knowledge around the rest of the country with the other councils, he's been able to pull everything in together and to make very good sense of it. And I really, I mean, when you look through the document, not many people made comments. Councillor Nicholson, if I remember correctly, made lots of comments. I made one, I don't know who else, but I think Mr. Wilde really does deserve a vote of thanks from the whole council for all his work.
I quite agree. And thank you, Mr. Wilde, very much indeed. Right. That actually can apply to a lot of officers. Now, as we move on, right. Does that finish? That finishes the cabinet side. Then we move on to the committee's work plan. We've got to council's forward plan. Are there any comments on that? No. Right. We do have to follow up work on the corporate complaints. There was an item at a previous meeting.
That's on your agenda for November.
That's on agenda for November. And then the next item is Corporate Scrutiny Committee's work plan. Well, we're starting to get into, by the time we've had Christmas and then we've had a bit more COVID, and we're starting to get into the election period. But we still have a fair bit to go on with, and then we've got the budget to be looking at as well. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just waiting to go live. No, maybe not. I think people can hear me anyway. Just on the respect of our, oh, there we go. On the respect of our forward work plan for the 10th of November, would it be possible to actually broaden out the scope on the corporate complaints rather than just considering the issues identified at the 10th of March? Would it not be appropriate to actually have an update of what's actually happened since we've had the COVID-19 situation and how that has impacted on both our corporate complaints team and the number of complaints that we've had coming in, rather than just the issues that were raised in March?
Yeah, yes, I think we can do that. All right, we agree that, right? Okay, we can do that. Right, we'll I think move on to now members' question time. Hold on. I beg your pardon, Councillor Lilly. Yes, you come up on the screen here. Can you raise something on the work plan? Yes, Councillor Lilly.
We have on our work plan commercialisation strategy, and I think we needed to have a time to review the strategy that we had put forward, and actually be able to sort of comment on its progress, right, within that. So I just really wanted to raise that.
We'll take that into account for the future. I don't know what your I'm afraid I wasn't a member of that committee. I don't think at that time. Anyway, well,
I'm sure Mr. Thistlewood can actually give you a copy of the strategy.
Yes, he has. Yes, he will.
Of the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank the other officers for joining in as well.
Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.